and welcome back. Before I begin, I'd like to give a big thank you to my newest subscribers, Day 50912A, Wretched Reader, ILU People, and Addison Royce. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your taking the time to subscribe. And now on with the haul, which is my first book haul of 2012. This is my usual monthly haul from the Book Thing of Baltimore, a wonderful nonprofit that gives out free books on Saturdays and Sundays and also accepts any unwanted books. And you can visit their website at www.bookthing.org. And now onward. My first acquisition is a little bit of a cautionary tale because I know if I'm notorious for one thing, it probably is I'm always saying, well, isn't this the greatest cover? I don't really know what this book is, but you've got to love the cover, or I don't really know what this book is, but it's from such a great imprint, or whatever. This is a cautionary tale about judging a book by its cover that dates back actually quite a few years to when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I know I was 9 years old or younger because I switched schools when I was, when I was 9, and so this was at my elementary school. But I was a big Louisa May Alcott fan, and my school library had this book of hers called Under the Lilacs, which was this exact same edition with this cover that is a little bit goofy and sentimental looking now, but when I was 8 or 9, this looked like the most exciting thing in the world. And so I brought it home, and back in those days, I was the kind of person who, if I started a book, I had to finish it, even if I really hated it. And one thing about Louisa May Alcott is that she's written some really wonderful books, but she is also pretty uneven, and when she's bad, she's just really, really bad. And I remember this as being pretty much one of the most boring books I'd ever read. So, let this be a lesson to you. Just because it has a great cover doesn't mean it's necessarily a good book. And yet, for some reason, I picked it up and decided to bring it home, I guess as a lasting testament to that lesson. And oddly enough, this little imprint, Watermill Classics, has been responsible for, or was responsible at the time, for my reading some other really kind of mediocre children's classics, like Pollyanna, which had a great cover, which I was not really a big fan of, and Five Little Peppers, which had a great cover, and which, in my opinion, is one of the worst children's books ever written, although obviously there are people who disagree because it's a classic. Anyway, enough self-castigation for one day, or for one video. Next, I got The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart. I'm sort of sporadically collecting her Merlin or Arthurian saga, and someday I may even read it. And then I got Dialogue by Gilles Deleuze and Claire Parnay. I have no idea who Claire Parnay is, but Gilles Deleuze is pretty well known in French literary theory circles. I'm not really clear on his sort of overarching message. He's just one of these names I hear bandied about, so I guess I had better read this and find out. And then I got a novel by Samuel R. Delany, The Ballad of Beta 2. Alright, Samuel R. Delany, I don't really know at this point, because a few months ago I read what is supposedly his masterwork, Dahlgren, and I really did not like it. It was like 800 pages long, 900 pages long, and it just really did nothing for me. The only reason I finished it was because in the novel I'm working on now, one of my characters, it's his favorite book, so I figured I owed it to him to finish the thing, and it was, oh man, it was not good. But this one is much shorter, and he is supposed to be really good, and his ideas sound so interesting, so I figured I'll give him at least another couple tries and see what happens. And then I got The Lady or the Tiger and Other Stories by Frank Stockton, which you gotta love the cover. But I've actually read The Lady or the Tiger, not the other stories, but I really like that. It's one of those stories that's pretty highly anthologized in your average famous American short story collection. And apparently this contains The Discourager of Hesitancy, which is a sequel to The Lady or the Tiger, which is great because if you've read the original story, you may remember it ends on rather a cliffhanger, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And then I got The Penguin Book of German Verse. These anthologies are really great because they have the original language, and then as a footnote they have the English translation. So if you have dreams, as I do, of someday learning German, you can tell yourself that, well, right now I'll read the translation, someday I'll read it in the original. And then I got Gregor von Razori's The Death of My Brother Abel. This is not really one of the most famous German language novels out there, but it's pretty well known. I'd say it's maybe on the second tier. And it's supposed to be a modernist masterpiece, and I'm a big fan of German language modernism. Some of my favorite books are The Sleepwalkers, The Man Without Qualities, Berlin Alexanderplatz, I'm Not Stiller, so looking forward to reading this one. And then I was so excited to find this. This is The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists by Robert Tressel. And this is sort of a minor classic that I think is enjoying a bit of a comeback. It's supposedly this great proletarian, socialist, realist novel written in the early 20th century. I don't really know that much about it, but it's supposed to be really good, and I think it is a little bit hard to find, so I'm really glad I found it. And then I got this novel, All Shall Be Well, and All Shall Be Well, and All Manner of Things Shall Be Well by Todd Woodicke. And this is a novel about a historical reenactor and how he feels out of place and very out of place in his own time, which is our present time. And I think a lot of people, especially people who are big readers, often feel a little bit out of place in their own time and locale. So I just thought this would be interesting. Another one I was so excited to find. This is Cold Collar or White Collar Noir by Jason Starr. And if you've seen my earlier videos, you know that Jason Starr is one of my all-time favorite modern crime novelists, and I have not read this one, so I'm really, really eager to get to it. Hello, and welcome back. You may have noticed that that last video terminated sort of weirdly and abruptly. That was because my mother showed up with some stray dog she found on the street and wants me to try to find the owner. And I'm working on that. But anyway, I figure I'll just continue where I left off. Next I got The Glamour, a novel by Christopher Priest, who is a writer of, I guess he writes dark fantasy. He's one of these writers I've never read before, but am eager to try. And then I got this novel, Within Normal Limits by Todd Grimson. Talk about judging a book by its cover. I've never heard of this one, but it is published by the kind of old school Vintage Contemporaries edition, where they used to have this great color block with the author's name, and they don't really print them like that anymore, but they tend to be pretty interesting books, so I just picked it up. And if you've watched any of my recent hauls, you know that I'm a huge fan of Faye Weldon, and I found another collection of her stories, A Hard Time to Be a Father. And then I was really excited to find this. This is Bunny Modern by David Bowman, who was kind of a cult novelist, or I mean, he's still alive, but as far as I know, he's written only 2 novels, Let the Dog Drive and Bunny Modern. And I liked Let the Dog Drive. It was kind of a mashup of different genres. Not perfect, but a pretty interesting little tale. And so I'm eager to see what he did with the second novel. He also wrote a book about the Talking Heads called, I think This Must Be the Place, which I have not read yet either. And this one doesn't have a dust jacket, but it's a novel called Sea by Tom McCarthy. I was really excited to find this because Tom McCarthy wrote a great little book of criticism called Tintin and the Secret of Literature. And so I'm really looking forward to trying out his fiction and seeing how that works. And then I picked up this novel by George Foy called Coaster. George Foy is primarily a science fiction writer these days, but he apparently got his start with more conventional thrillers. And I unfortunately have not yet read any of his science fiction either, although I have plenty of it sitting around, but I figured I would pick this up just to see how he got his start. And then I got a bunch of memoirs. I got Only When I Laugh, a post-marriage adventure, hazardous, hilarious, and true by Erica Abiel. And then the autobiography of Edward Gibbon. And The Romanian, Story of an Obsession by Bruce Benderson. And then this sort of has a little bit of a memoir connection. This is a novel called On Spec by Richard Rushfield, a novel of young Hollywood. And the memoir connection here is that I read Rushfield's memoir called Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost, which was about his time at Bennington. And I didn't love the memoir, but I really liked his voice, his narrative voice, and so I decided I would give his novel a try. And then this is really exciting. I got 3 really exciting second chances here this time around. This is a novel called The Closed Circle by Jonathan Coe. And I had seen this there before, and I'd heard of Jonathan Coe, but I wasn't really all that interested in it. And then I read this other novel of his I had called The Rotters Club, which I absolutely loved. And this is the sequel to The Rotters Club. So after I finished The Rotters Club, I was like, oh no, why did I pass up the sequel? And I found it. Yay! And another one is another novel by Kurt Anderson called Turn of the Century. And this one I actually had for a while. I read something about it and it sounded kind of interesting, and then I flipped through it and was like, this probably isn't that good, and decided to just pass on it. And then I discovered not a novel, a little satirical work called The Real Thing, written by Kurt Anderson back in 1980. And I loved that and thought it was adorable and kind of, I mean, he comes off like a little bit of a jerk, but in sort of that semi-endearing 1980s way. And so I suddenly was like, why did I give up Turn of the Century? And I found it again. And last but not least, this was also super exciting because I passed on this book, I think, not 1, not 2, but 3 times. And this is Youth in Revolt by C.D. Payne. And you may remember my checking the movie out a while ago and having my doubts about it, but overall thinking it was, once I'd seen it, thinking it was really good. And so then, of course, I wanted to read the book, which I had passed up in my bookstore days when it showed up damaged. Passed up, I'd seen it at the book thing sometime before and passed it up. And then when I was working the book sale at the library, I hadn't yet known whether I was going to be working on All You Can Carry Day, so I decided not to start filling my box until I knew. And of course this was there, and I didn't put it in my box, and it went away, and finally I found it, and it has the movie cover, which is kind of nice, although I actually like the other cover better, but beggars can't be choosers. And I believe I have some good news about the dog. I think its owner called, and we're ready to take it back, so that's really great. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me for my next video.